Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this launch webinar. It's the first event moving towards a national landscape restoration conference. My name is Mika Bon Ochieng. I'll be the moderator for this event. And we're very excited. We have a very diverse and vibrant group of speakers today. As it's a launch event, we'll be moving quite quickly, but we hope to delve into many of the issues that are raised in greater detail as we continue. And I just wanted to let you know that as attendees, you'll be able to make comments in the Q&A box, and you will be able to vote up other comments or questions. And we'll have two 10-minute Q&A sessions where you'll be able to make comments and we'll be able to ask the panelists some of the questions that you raise. The event is being recorded so that we can share it on other platforms, so just so that you're aware. And when each of the speakers is speaking, I encourage you to put your video on, and please stay within the 5 minutes allocated so that we can make it through the full agenda in an hour and a half. So first, I would like to welcome Dr. Susan Chomba from World Agroforestry. She's the Regreening Africa Program Manager, and she's here to share the conference vision and objectives. Welcome, Susan.
A warm welcome to all our participants. It's a great pleasure to connect with you all this morning. As you've heard, my name is Dr. Susan Chomba. I'm a scientist with the World Agroforestry Center here in Nairobi, ICRAF, but also a Kenyan national, and really excited to be part of this. This conference is an effort, or an idea, an effort and commitment from a lot of partners, some of whom will be speaking today, but others also who are not able to speak today because we didn't want to make this webinar very long. So I just want to appreciate all the participants, all the partners who've come together to put this together, and basically to say, especially the leadership of the Kenyan government, the different government ministries, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, Kenya Forest Service, KEFRI, and other government institutes and county governments that have also been very committed towards working with us on this. I want to say that the conference basically is building on what is already on the ground. We are not starting from scratch. A lot of us, many actors were in this conference today, and others who've not even joined us. We have various kind of activities on the ground in terms of restoration. The Kenyan government as well, in fact, some of the videos that we'll be showing some partnership with government ministries and local communities and other actors on the ground trying to do restoration activities. So then why do we need to have a webinar, you may ask yourself. The main idea about having this webinar is to bring the different actors together to have a coordinated restoration movement across the country. And this is going then to help us have a roadmap to understand what we are lacking in terms of really putting efforts together. I'd like to give an analogy of an aeroplane, that the place that we currently are in, we have different parts. We have some wheels in Nairobi moving. We have some wings of the plane somewhere in Massabek doing some restoration activities there. We have some a window of an aeroplane that is working on another site, maybe in Migori and Homa Bay. So we need to really bring these parts together, the different parts of the plane, and we need an adhesive that puts them together and some pilots to leaders so that we are all, even when we are working in different parts of this country in terms of trying to restore degraded lands, we are glued together towards one particular objective, and we have some pilots that are leading us, and we are working together towards this vision. So I'd like to mention that, we all know that the UN has declared 2021 to 2030 the decade of ecosystem restoration. The Kenyan government has made commitments under AFR 100, the 5.1 million hectares to be restored by 2030. And so as this aeroplane is being put together, we think that this is a timely opportunity to put this plane together so that when 2021 is beginning, when the UN is launching that decade officially, the country, Kenya as a country, we are already ahead of time in terms of putting our plane together, and we are ready to take off and really catalyze a big movement across the country in terms of land restoration. So the objectives of the conference are well laid out in the invitations that we set out. This is just one of the webinars that is going to help us reach there. We will have a series of webinars that we are trying to piece together the different missing elements. But in terms of the key objectives, one of them is to ensure that we are supporting government efforts in terms of restoring achieving the 5.1 million hectares, as well as the 10% tree cover on farm. The second objective would be to showcase what kind of restoration practices exist beyond tree planting. And there are a lot of those. And the actors that are part of this conference will be able to showcase some of those, as well as in the subsequent webinars. And then objective number 3, to identify opportunities and amplify and scale up our restoration efforts. Objective number 4, exactly what we are doing today, to bring together different stakeholders working in the restoration space, and especially to develop a common roadmap, including contributing to the restoration portal that we understand KEFRI has been leading. And we are so looking forward to hearing from Dr. Jane Jogona of KEFRI on what has been happening there. And objective number 5, to catalyze a national restoration movement that can shape mindsets and active implementation of restoration in this country. And number 6 is to develop a platform for engaging with policymakers that will contribute to necessary policy adjustments. And we are going to hear from Kenya Forest Service in terms of what is happening in terms of the implementation action plan and implementation strategy that can really anchor our efforts. Number 7, to catalyze funding for restoration in the country towards realizing our commitments under AFR 100 under the Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And number 8, to establish a national restoration committee that identifies and rewards successful restoration initiatives and community champions. We want this to be a bottom-up led process by communities, but with top-down support from government and from other actors who are really, really engaged. And number 9 is to work towards a joint national monitoring task force that is comprised of different institutes that have the technical capacities, national, international, academic institutes that can really help us to monitor and report on our restoration targets. So that is the objective of the conference that we are aiming to really launch in 2021, mid-2021. This is the first webinar to bring together partners towards working towards that, so that even as we are doing our activities on the ground, we have the big vision. As the UN Decade is launching in 2021, we are also launching our land restoration movement in the country, but with several steps and webinars that are building towards that. So with that, I'd like to welcome all the participants and say, Karibuni sana. We are so much looking forward to hearing from our speakers. And thank you so much for the participants. Join us and ask questions, and let's get this moving. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you so much, Susan, for outlining the vision and the objectives. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Honorable Mohammed Ibrahim Elmi, who's the Chief Administrative Secretary from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, to give us the opening remarks and outline how we can achieve Kenya's AFR 100 commitment and also achieve 10% tree cover. Honorable Elmi.
Thank you. First, I was to say that I don't have a good background behind me. I'm in traffic jam going to the office from another function where I think some of your participants are. First of all, I want to say welcome to all the participants and thank you for the organizers that have put this together. As the first speaker said, yes, Kenya has committed itself to restoring 5.1 million hectares as part of the Bonn, agreement. And we, as a country, we supported a decade for restoration, I think 2 years ago. The last landscape meeting, again in Kenya, we hosted it. And we are quite committed. I think for me, this webinar, what it should be able to do is to ensure that all the various actors come together and act as one. Again, the goodness with restoration, all restoration is on a landscape, whether it's in a forest, whether it is on a desert, whether it's the whole range. And it will help us achieve all the other things that we have committed ourselves. For example, our constitution demands that by 2030, we reach 10% forest cover, but our president said, let's achieve it by 2022. He reaffirmed his commitment to the 5.1 again in the last UNEA meeting, which was here in Nairobi. So the challenge has been a number of it. One is how do we go beyond headquarters and take it to the ground? In my opinion, the centralized system, which is the counties, is a critical element in us achieving this. And because all spaces, whether forests, water catchment, whether private land, whether it's community land, is in a county somewhere. So if we can push the coordination to that level, I believe we'll achieve quite a lot. Then at that level, we need every county to be able to plan the area they're going to restore and by what time. And once we have that in place, our job at the national level will be easy. And I would say that in quotes, it is how to bring then support. One is technologies for restoration, the technologies coordination support, and also financial support that is coordinated, that is not competing with itself. And therefore, in my view, that is where we need. There is an area that I want to emphasize, that most of the time when we talk of restoration, as Robert Chambers put in his first books on participation, that we go to the near places, we go where the tarmacs are. And I want to say that we have, for example, very few Kenyans know we have a desert that is slowly growing, that is becoming a challenge into the future. And so far, very little work in terms of restoration or stopping it from the expansion is happening. But also, there are challenges in terms of our existing forests. There is competition for the use of the landscape by farmers, by individuals who want to develop properties. There is a whole, and another one, especially in the dry lands, is settlements. Settlements are coming up unplanned. And therefore, my message today to the team is Kenya government is ready to support, and it will be in the forefront, but we need all the actors to be together. We bring all the knowledge both within the country and outside the country, because the commitment we made is a commitment that is for the world, is for our survival as the human beings on Earth, and actually all the other species that are there. But probably the human beings' survival is more, probably if all the human beings even went, the Earth will survive better. So we need to come together and make sure that our efforts are coordinated, they are based on science and best practice that already exists, and that we are on target, that we have a very clear plan, because 2030 is not very far. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so much, Honourable Elmi, and I love the sentence of going to the tarmac or the maram and taking things to the ground. We really appreciate those opening remarks, and thank you so much. We hope you can stay on line for as long as possible to participate. Thank you so much.
I'll continue listening to the other participants. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd now like to welcome Professor Hamadi Boga, who's the Principal Secretary for the State Department of Crop Development and Agricultural Research, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives, who will be also sharing some opening remarks and looking at the potential and benefit of restoring Kenya's degraded agricultural landscapes. Welcome, Professor Boga.
Thank you very much. Sorry for joining in late, but I was able to hear Dr. Elmi's presentation. And this is an area which in the Ministry of Agriculture, we are very passionate about, because agricultural activities have a heavy fingerprint on the landscape. And human settlements also have a heavy fingerprint on the landscape. And in the last 2-3 years, we've been talking about how to restore degraded landscape, both in catchment areas, in woodlands, as well as in agricultural areas, and how to get every stakeholder involved in the landscape restoration. So what I would like to emphasize is that we have to find ways to preach the gospel of landscape restoration to every stakeholder, be they in government, be they communities, be they counties, be they in industry, because they also have a significant fingerprint. We have to explain what that means and the importance of restoring the degraded landscape. From the agriculture point of view, we have noted, of course, the declining productivity because of the loss of ecosystem services. And from the human need perspective, we have seen, of course, loss of water sources, especially springs, because of the clearing of the soil cover, and therefore a lot of the soil is being carried away. We have seen loss of soil fertility because of leaching and the washing away of top agricultural soil. And as a primary driver of this ourselves in agriculture, we have come up with projects like the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project, and all our projects have a component of how to deal with the climate and how to manage the soil and land management resources. I think this is very key for all of us to get a comprehensive understanding of what needs to be done. I know stakeholders came up with the landscape restoration plan, but I think its implementation is still not properly coordinated. And so we feel like the Ministry of Environment should take the lead and educate all of us about that plan and the work systematically targeting the most affected landscape, bringing in stakeholders together to make sure that there's a restoration plan for every landscape so that we can walk back the losses that we have suffered in terms of vegetation, diversity, soil. A good thing with the environment is that it can restore itself. I know a lot of effort is going to planting trees and seedlings. Could be quite expensive, but there needs to be investment in that, which include involvement of youth and school children and so on and so forth. But I think the key thing is to identify sensitive areas and just secure them, and then to work with communities to give them alternative livelihoods that are nature friendly, and just to raise the level of consciousness among the communities, the leaders, as well as the political leaders, so that our policies and our interventions are landscape conscious to make sure that the landscape remain undegraded. So I wish the participants fruitful deliberations, and we're in this together. We are talking with our German development partners around the SOCNOT project, which is southern Kenya, northern Tanzania landscape, all the way from Mara to Tsavo, with a focus on Tsavo restoration. And we have started already engaging at both at the community level as well as at the leadership level to give them alternatives and to find solutions together so that we can secure our landscapes and our environment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Boga, for these wonderful opening remarks. And it is wonderful to hear about the gospel of landscape restoration and the inclusion of all the stakeholders. And we're really excited by that. And we're looking forward to hearing from some of these stakeholders today and more as the webinars continue. So thank you so much for those remarks. I'd now like to welcome Ms. Myra Bernardi from the European Union, from the delegation of the European Union to Kenya.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to be part of the National Landscape Restoration Scaling Conference as we build up collective action and learning from ongoing actions like the Regreening Africa programme to catalyse a national restoration movement that can shape mindsets and active implementation, as well as help Kenya achieve multiple objectives, including her NDC mitigation and adaptation ambition. This conference happens at a crucial time during a global pandemic that requires pursuing of innovations to build back better, transition our economies to green, and days to Kenya's submission of its revised NDC to the UNFCCC Secretariat. Landscape restoration, apart from achieving livelihoods and creating habitats for biodiversity, will also help Kenya abate its greenhouse gases, estimated by 32% by 2030. We at the European Union will continue building on our strong partnership with Kenya, and especially with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, its lead agencies, and partner organizations like ICRAF, World Vision, WRI, and others to tackle climate change, conserve biodiversity, and innovate to sustain in a balanced manner the productivity of Kenya's natural capital. We are happy to note that the EU-funded Regreening Africa programme has restored 405,226 hectares and provided food, fodder and fibre to 283,000 households, which is about 1.7 million persons over the past 3 years. This is evidence that it is possible to achieve a green transition and livelihood improvement. In Kenya, we at the EU also support land governance with the Food and Agriculture Organization and the Ministry of Lands. We support climate-smart agricultural practices together with the Ministry of Agriculture, IFAD and FAO. We support integrated landscape management with the Northern Rangelands Trust and various northern counties, and many other resilience-building programs across the ASALs, especially in partnership with the National Drought Management Authority. We urge these and our other various programs working on land restoration and conservation to collaborate and work together to contribute to a greener Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU, together with member states and European development banks, are currently discussing our next suite of grants and loans under the multi-annual financial framework from 2021 to 2027. Here in Kenya, we are keen, amongst other topics, to continue supporting land restoration, climate change mitigation, biodiversity conservation, livelihood improvement, circular economy, and resilience. As part of the formulation, we have consulted the Ministry of Environment and Forestry on our green transition and resilience priority area. Next week, between the 9th and 11th of December 2020, we shall be consulting civil society organizations. Some of you have received invitations and we look forward to engaging with you. Finally, we will be consulting with other stakeholders, such as the private sector, other relevant government ministries and agencies, and so on. With these remarks, I once again, on behalf of the European Union, express our gratitude for your invitation and wish you all successful deliberations. Asante sana na Mungu awabariki. Let me try that again. Asante sana na Mungu awabariki. Thank you very much.
So now we'll move over to Dr. Jane Njuguna, who's a Senior Deputy Director for the Kenya Forest Research Institute. And she'll be sharing an overview of Kenya Forestry Research Institute's engagement in forest landscape restoration, including implementation and monitoring efforts. So please welcome Dr. Jane Njuguna.
Thank you and good morning. Wow. Good morning, team, and all participants to this webinar. First of all, I am honored to be part of this team, and thank you for inviting us. KEFRI is a national research institution, and its mandate is basically to carry out research in forestry and allied natural resources. Alongside that, we have capacity building. We disseminate our research findings and establish partnership and cooperate with other research organizations and institutions of higher learning in joint research and training. It is important for us because as a research institution, we are not everywhere. So our research finding must be taken by partners, including stakeholders. The key words in this seminar, as I understood it, is land restoration, which basically means bring back the landscape to its original state. And in this I have also my understanding is in terms of restoration, we can just have natural regeneration or aided regeneration. I will not go through all the details because you can see the screen, and there are many technologies and methods that are used. The main issue here, or the main factor to look at in restoration, is to bring back to the original plant species mix or the original biodiversity using various methods. Now, in terms of KEFRI's engagement, KEFRI has been, which was established about 34 years ago. And over the years, we know for a fact that 90% of tree species are propagated from seed. Therefore, for all restoration activities, seed is a prerequisite. In the National Forest Program 2016 to 2030, it was identified the importance of quality germplasm as key to achieving the restoration and the 10% tree cover by 2030. So in this, we have two main focus in the restoration. We are focusing on generating technologies and scientific information to inform landscape restoration through, one, provision of quality forest and tree germplasm. And this includes seeds, cuttings, maggots, tissue culture, and materials, and tissue culture materials. Quality denotes that these are materials that have gone through a scientific process in terms of selection, testing, and multiplication, and also growing them for seed production. I have a picture of some of the various types of tree germplasm that KEFRI is working on, and we are focusing on indigenous tree species. Why? Because they are best suited to our environment. In terms of the tree seeds, providing quality seed, we have the main challenge of our indigenous tree species that they are not well understood. Their biology is not well understood. In cognizance of this, KEFRI developed three main strategies, that the tree breeding strategies, and which is a long-term strategy from 2018 to 2043, basically focusing on breeding in at least 5 tree indigenous species for each ecological zones. We are also looking at identifying tree species that are endangered or on their way to extinction. And we have worked a lot on Euphorbia thaiensis. May the panel be informed that Euphorbia, by the time we started in 2012, there were only 4 trees surviving in Tana River ecosystem. So far, we have about 250 seedlings. Why 250? We are happy because it has taken a long time in terms of understanding how to propagate. The other one is East African sandalwood. We're also looking at developing protocols for certification of tree nurseries to ensure that exchange of healthy materials is done. The other strategy is tree seed production strategy. You know that KEFRI is tasked to produce the 10%, the seeds for the 10% tree cover. Our target was increased from 38 to 160 metric tons in order to achieve the 10% tree cover by 2022. We are on our way to doing that. And for the other one is health. The National Forest Health Strategy is key for us to maintain a healthy ecosystem through protecting our indigenous germplasm from infection from pests and diseases. And this we've been working through with ICRAF and other partners and KEFIs to ensure that phytosanitary measures are enforced at all points of entry during germplasm exchange. The other the technology or approach that we have is developing technologies for restoration and rehabilitation of degraded forest, wetlands, and riparian areas. And this, we go through integration of biodiversity conservation and sustainable land use, demonstrating site-specific technologies for rehabilitation, restoration, and conservation, management of invasive tree species and invasive plant species is key to our restoration activity. And in terms of mitigating disasters that include floods and soil conservation control, we are promoting the use of bamboo, vetiver grass, and other durable technologies. Madam Chair, KEFRI is also in the process of developing and launching a mobile application to track the 10% tree cover activities and other restoration activities so that we can tell whether we are actually moving, are we just mark timing, or are we going backwards? Because we know there are also processes that can take us backwards. In terms of restoration technologies as well, we have the establishment of enhancing establishment potentials of trees in the asals. Hello?
Dr. Hadi, just one more minute, if that's okay.
Yes, I'm about to finish actually.
Wonderful,
so in terms of combating the desertification, we are insisting on species site matching. And Madam Chair, restoring the 5.1 million hectares is not just going to take the conventional means. So as an institute, we piloted last year aerial seeding, and we are continuing to say that aerial seeding of selected and eligible landscape is the way to attain our targets. So in terms of, you can see what is on the screen. So I do not have to read through, but just to say that KEFRI is strategic and we are located in places, but you see that there are places we are not in, and we are moving forward towards that in terms of building infrastructure so that stakeholders can access research. Enhancing linkages, we appreciate our development partners and our partners over time that have helped us develop technologies through their support. And they are there. We have over 30 stakeholders with us supporting our restoration and research activities. Thank you. We are proud to present the Euphorbia tanensis, 250 seedlings from 4, and we have the Euphorbia tanensis now in conservation stands, and we are continuing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jane Nguna. And we'd love to have the presentation to share with others as well so that they can see it in great detail. Wonderful to hear about all these technologies.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We're now moving forward to see a short video from the Kalacha irrigation scheme in Massabek County. So this is just a few minutes, so it'll be up to 5 minutes of a short video. We wanted to also make sure that we're seeing the ground, even though we can't be there in these virtual times. Wonderful. So please enjoy this video.
A jewel in the middle of the desert, a life that sprouts out of nowhere, some green in the midst of a brown. This is Kalacha Irrigation Scheme. Located in Kalacha location of Massabek County, just a few kilometers from the infamous Chalbi Desert, Kalacha Irrigation Scheme stands not just as a beacon of hope for the locals, but also as a model of success.
Sisi wale watu wanaishi kwa hii sehemu tunategemea kawaida mifugo. Mara kwa mara mvua inaweza kosa kunyesha. Na mvua ikikosa kunyesha tunategemea hii shamba letu.
The scheme was started in 1984 with an area of 20 acres where farmers used to grow fruits, vegetables, sweet potatoes, and sugarcane. Due to drought and wild animals, the farmers decided to change to pasture production.
Nilikuwa mbeleni tunapanda hata chakula, sukuma, spinach na babai na watermelon. Nyani ndio tunasumbua sisi wote watu wa shamba. Mchana sisi unachunga, usiku tena anaingia anakula. Sasa hiyo chakula lilishindwa, nikawacha sababu hiyo nyani. Kitu sasa sisi ziko nayo ni nyasi, kitu tu ng'ombe na mbuzi ndio anakulanga nyasi na hiyo lusina.
Kulikuwa na changamoto mingi, maji ni shida, maji hakuna pipes, hakuna canal, maji inatembea ndani ya matope, inapotea, ardhi yenyewe ni kidogo, maji ile inaingia shamba ni kidogo, tunaendelea hivyo.
From those challenges, we were able to talk with the community and their leaders, and we identified the Kalacha Irrigation Scheme as an area where we can do intervention through this program of DRSLP.
DRSLP is a 5-year project co-financed by the African Development Bank, AFDB, through a loan, and the Government of Kenya, and is coordinated by the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries, and Cooperatives. Kalacha Irrigation Scheme covers an area of 200 acres, benefiting 315 farmers directly. The scheme supplies water by use of lined canals and the pipeline system and is hinged on pasture production.
Mwaka 2018 pamoja na 19, wakati kazi ilikuwa inaendelea, tukauza nyasi 1900, zingine ziko kwa store. Hii ni kama karibu 1100. Kuna nyasi mingi sana ambayo iko ndani ya mashamba bado zinaendelea kutolewa, na hizo approximately ni kama hii nyumba mara 3-4, na zingine zimepelekwa manyumbani huko town, wengine wanahata uza huko, na wengine wanalisha mifugo. Hiyo naye ni karibu 2000, na nyasi imekuwa kwa wingi.
Ilikuwa mbeleni shamba tu kidogo napatanga maji. Sasa shamba mingi sasa iko na maji.
The scheme has an Irrigation Water Users Association that comprises 23 members drawn from all over Kalacha. To support the scheme management, there are 4 subcommittees that address various issues. These subcommittees include production and marketing, conflict resolution, environment, and operation and maintenance subcommittees.
Hapo mbeleni zamani tulikuwa katika social services. Tulikuwa na certificate ya social services. Lakini kwa vile sasa tumepanuka na tumeongeza nguvu, tunataka kuwa Kalacha Irrigation Cooperative Society. Na tayari we are in the process kupata permit ya warma pia, ili maji yetu tuitunze, tufanyie irrigation, na pia hata kwa matumizi mengine yawe yanakubalika.
When we distribute the water, there are some people who are the day, and there are some who are to water their farm during the night.
While the harvesting of pasture is still ongoing, the farmers have already managed to harvest 1,900 bales of hay, valued at 950,000 Kenya shillings.
Shamba iko na faida mingi. Unajua saa zingine najua mtu iko hata akina mama hata akina wazee iko gogoi, haishughuliki na hiyo kulima. Mimi hata ikifika usiku saa 10 unaweza kukuta mimi iko kati ya jilali huko kwa shamba. Huwezi kosa mimi. Sababu maji mtu anakunyanga na usiku.
Despite its success, farmers in this scheme still face a few challenges. These include poor market linkages for hay marketing and lack of appropriate pasture harvesting tools and equipment. With the support of Massabek County Government through the Projects County Office, measures are being put in place to address these challenges.
Sasa si watu imepata faida mingi. Sasa zingine ilikuwa zamani hiyo nyasi mimi nakaa hapa mchana nashinda, usiku mtu anakuja anaiba na zioni. Sasa kila watu wengi sasa wamepata. Hakuna mtu hata anakujanga kuiba nyasi.
Hatutafuga nyasi peke yake, tutaendelea kutafuta mbinu ya kupanda chakula aina yoyote ambayo inaweza kuwa katika hii sehemu joto. Tunatarajia sisi kama wakulima tumesema tutapanda chakula ambaye angalau itatutosheleza sisi wakaaji wa Kalacha, na ikizidi inaweza kuwa ni ya kuuza.
Thank you so much, participants. I hope that video that was shared with us actually by CS Tobiko, Ministry of Environment, really after his visit to Marsabit and seeing the great work that was being led by the Ministry of Agriculture, really showing the partnership and the excitement between the two ministries of agriculture and environment, and really telling us, no, you need to show this because I have seen it with my own eyes on the ground in Marsabit. And even though we are not able to bring these farmers to come here and share the stories themselves, we are really, really inspired to see what we can be able to do on the ground. It's really, really great. Professor Hamadi Boga, great work there with that Kalacha, irrigation scheme, but also CS Tobiko, you've been a big champion in terms of what we can be able to do, and you've been looking for these successful stories. And in fact, I'd like to acknowledge that that CS Tobiko is fully aware, supportive, and well represented in this conference. He's given us his blessings, and he says he's really looking forward to seeing what we are doing on the ground. He wants to visit. He has his boots on the ground, and he wants to visit us on the ground and see what we are doing. So this is very inspiring. And just before we go to the next session, I'd like to introduce a few of our staff members as well, and some of our team members in terms of organizing this conference, this webinar, who will not be able to speak, but just ask them to turn their videos on and just introduce themselves briefly before we move to the next session. So kindly, Ravi Prabhu, Deputy Director, ICRAF, please turn your video on and introduce yourself. In the meantime, we'll have Dr. Catherine Muthuri next, Jonathan Muriuki next, and Rose Akombo from KFS next. So kindly turn on your videos. Ravi, over to you.
Thank you, Susan, for the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Catherine Muthuri, the Regional Coordinator, East and Southern Africa at ICRAF, and restoration is in the heart of our agenda in East and Southern Africa. And the beauty is, being Kenyan, there are many things we can learn and close learn from the other countries in East and Southern Africa, like Ethiopia, Rwanda, Burundi. And therefore, we are happy to be in this meeting and look upon to the support of Kenyan government ministries in leading the restoration agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's a great pleasure to be in this webinar and to see all the partners that are doing lots of exciting work in this. My name is Jonathan Muriuki. I work as a country representative for Kenya for ICRAF, and it's my joy to be supporting partnerships with all of you in this work. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sana. Thank you so much. Rose, kindly.
Thank you, Susan. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for the partners and for the everyone who is able to join this webinar. I'm Rosa Combo. I work for Kenya Forest Service. I coordinate landscape restoration initiative in Kenya Forest Service, and I'm leading the technical working group that is called developing the landscape restoration implementation action plan. I'm so much excited for your contribution during this webinar, and we are looking forward to engaging you further. We are taking note of your comments and the recommendations that you have made during this webinar, and we are going to incorporate them in as we develop and finalize this implementation action plan. We are calling upon each and every stakeholder to join the movement and take part as we move to restore all the degraded landscape in the country and make Kenya a better place to live in. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Before I take over, I can see Dr. Ravi Prabhu. Ravi, are you able to say hello to us? Okay, Mika, I hand these over to you.
Thank you, Susan. And just before I introduce Mr. Julius Kamau, who's the Chief Conservator of Forests for the Kenya Forestry Service, I would just like to encourage everybody, please put your questions on the Q&A, and please vote up other people's comments or questions, because we'll have a slightly shorter time for the first Q&A, and I'd like to see which ones people would like to have answered most. So please work on the Q&A, add your questions, your comments, and vote others up. So now it's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Julius Kamau, as I mentioned, Chief Conservator of Forests from the Kenya Forestry Service, and he'll be providing an overview of KFS engagement in forest landscape restoration.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for organizing this platform this morning, which provide an excellent opportunity for discussion on the National Landscape Restoration Skilling Agenda in Kenya. Our collective focus, I believe, is on catalyzing a national movement and leading all the partners together for realizing the national multiple aspirations in the forest and landscape sectors. And mainly, I'll look at achievement of the 10% national tree cover, which is something that has been ascribed within our constitution and all our strategic plans of this country. Kenya's pledge to restore 5.1 million hectares under the African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative, AFR 100, and the Bond Challenge. And finally, the vision of the UN Decade on ecosystem restoration. Our joint aspiration for this conference, catalyzing a national movement for realizing the vision of the UN Decade of ecosystem restoration, requires commitment and dedication, and our collective efforts as government and agencies of government, partners, landowners, and experts, and the deployment of appropriate technologies so that we can jointly deliver on these targets. Kenya Forest Service remains committed and ready to provide leadership in the conservation, protection, and sustainable management of forest resources. A part of our drive to maintain the requisite focus on the delivery of this great challenging targets, the Kenya Forest Service, with support from FAO and GF and other partners, is coordinating a multi-stakeholder process to develop a 5-year forest and landscape restoration implementation action plan, 2021-2025, under the auspice of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. The goal of this plan is to bring all actors together to put Kenya's deforested and degraded landscapes under restoration while contributing to national development goal and restoration targets. Under the action plan, the objective is to put 2.55 million hectares of deforested and degraded landscapes under restoration through FLL approaches by 2025. This is going to be achieved, I believe, through a multi-stakeholder process that build on successful restoration initiatives scattered across the country. It is therefore anticipated that this will be achieved through the following measures, among many. 1, strengthening policy and regulatory framework at national and county levels, identifying and promoting best practices for restoring degraded land and forests that are suitable for different local contexts, scaling up restoration and sustainable management of deforested and degraded landscapes through a multi-stakeholder, bottom-up and inclusive process, generating economic opportunities for women and youth, and increase the resilience of vulnerable communities through sustainable FLL value chain. And it's good to appreciate that in our more than 177 forest stations across the country, the forest adjacent community to this forest are one of the most vulnerable communities in the country. And another thing is the strengthening the governance and institutional coordination, inclusive partnership and collaboration, establishing a monitoring, evaluation, reporting and landing framework, mobilizing resources for research, implementation, technology and innovations, capacity development and monitoring efforts. Currently, the Kenya Forest Service has placed focus on the following areas, which lay the foundation for the achievement of the forest and landscape restoration goal. 1, mapping of all degraded forest landscapes across the country. Development of a framework to support partners' engagement in the restoration activities, including what we are calling Adopt a Forest Guideline. We are also working towards developing an online reporting for tree planted in all landscapes across the country, because this has been one of the major challenges of monitoring and tracking the progress. Also, we have undertaken a process of registering all private, group, youth, CFA, and institutional tree nurseries across the country. Provision for revolving loans in partnership with Equity Bank, group holding, to farmers for investments in farm forestry and livelihood investments, enterprises, and real-time reporting of forest destruction incidences with a pilot in Kwale County. And we are hoping to upscale this across the country. Supporting communities for the development of participatory forest management plan, investment in nature-based enterprises, among others. And it's good to say at this point, I came a bit late, not by design. I actually was again gracing another very important event dealing with community-based natural resource management. It's a national conference bringing together all our CFAs together at the national level. And finally, engagement with the county government to commit resources for restoration of forests and landscapes across and under their jurisdiction. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate those remarks, and we fully appreciate that you managed to join us with all your other commitments as well today. So we have a few minutes for a Q&A. You can see that in the Q&A box, there are a number of panelists that are actually responding live, which is wonderful, and I encourage that to continue. But Mr. Kamau, I think this one could maybe come to you as the first question. There's been a question that's voted up quite highly that is asking about people who earn their living, particularly around activities that may harm the landscape, like charcoal burning. And the question was, how are these people going to be brought on board by ensuring they don't lose their source of livelihood? So straight into the question, Mr. Kamau, if you're willing to respond. Just unmute yourself if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you. I see you on my case.
Not intentionally, please.
Yeah, first of all, I think the power rests in terms of creating awareness among the communities. I think we cannot condemn Kenyans sometimes on what they do. I think we have to invest in actually creating and engaging with them and telling them why they need to actually conserve those resources. This morning, I gave an example of what we call a controlled access and sustainable utilization of resources. And if it comes to the question of informing the communities, of course, through the CFAs and other entities like the Water Resource Users Associations, we have the Wildlife Associations, we have the beach management units, and all these are community groupings which are institutionalized and anchored in law, but we have to build their capacity and tell them that if they don't use the resources sustainably and efficiently, then they are compromising their own livelihood and the livelihood of their own children. I think every person in this country values their children. When they know that if we do this and we exhaust our resources, then there's a tragedy of commons later on in all of us. And therefore, we have to really continuously engage with them, build the capacity, and continuously instill a culture of personal behavior change at that level so that they can understand they are not saving it for the government, but they are doing those changes, preserving them for their sustainable livelihood today and tomorrow. And I think this is where we need the network and a common voice as we rally each other in addressing this challenge.
Thank you so much for that response. And just a quick question to Susan. There's a question here on how stakeholders come on board and engage in this process with the existing partners. So if you could just touch on that briefly.
Thank you so much. I wasn't expecting a question. I was busy, picking some of the points from the CCF. They are brilliant points. But basically, this is an open, multi-stakeholder process. So this is the first webinar we've scheduled, and we are really calling upon other actors, other stakeholders. As you can see, there are so many issues that need to be discussed that can be discussed within 1.5 hours. That said, and I want to reiterate, we are not taking on webinars at the expense of activities on the ground. The rest time of the year, we are busy doing different activities, different engagements, but this just brings together different partners. So if you want to join, please write to us. There are contact details that will be provided. We'll link you up with the rest of the team, WRI, FAO, KFS, all the partners that are coming together into the planning process, as well as, of the webinars, as well as on the implementation and sharing of knowledge. Kefri as well, you've had fantastic presentations from Dr. Jane Juguna. So everybody here, plus other partners who want to join into this movement, please just write to us and we'll connect you with the rest of the team. Thank you. So we will share the contact details, I think, at the end of the webinar, but in the meantime, we'll also post them on WhatsApp, on the Q&A, on the chat room, so you can get in touch with us.
Thank you so much, Susan. And I know there's a lot of questions and we're answering them live, many of them, because I need to move on, but we will come back to another Q&A session a little bit later. And Irene, I've seen the questions particularly around private sector partnership and county government ownership, and they are very critical and in the minds of all of us, and will be coming out much more clearly in the following webinars. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce Ms. Elizabeth Wathuti, who's the head of campaigns at Wangari Maathai Foundation, and also the founder of the Regeneration initiative. And she'll be speaking about how we can have meaningful youth engagement in landscape restoration in Kenya. Please, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share about how we can meaningfully engage young people in land restoration. And of course, to begin with, I like to share about how and why I decided to be a voice of change in landscape restoration. And I would say that my exposure and connection to nature at a young age has really continued to provoke my thoughts and also my actions towards nature-based solutions. And as someone who grew up in the Central Highlands of Kenya, and in the most forested county in Kenya, that's Nyeri County, then I got to really connect to the natural world at a young age. And even beyond having that chance to plant my first tree at the age of 7, I think that connection to nature at a young age really made me want to understand about nature, learn more from nature, and also at the same time feel the pain of nature caused by environmental degradation, which I think is what really drives that natural call to action to want to do something about the different things that are happening to our natural world right now. Because as you can see from what we are facing, it seems like humanity is at war with nature. And we are the generation that is going to really change what is happening right now. And that is why I like to say that young people do have immense potential to contribute to landscape restoration. But then we really have to tap into their knowledge and their skills. And also we are definitely the restoration generation. And we know that investing in land restoration is definitely a long-term investment. So for me, having this exposure at a young age, I really wanted to also have the same happening to other young people out there. And that is how I came into founding Green Generation Initiative. And I remember it began with a campaign that I dubbed Adopt a Tree campaign, where I would ensure that every child in every school got a chance to plant and adopt a tree each in their school compound. And of course, moving along with the different challenges we are facing with the climate crisis, from food insecurity, and of course, heavily affecting the children, I thought that maybe we could also focus on tree seedlings that have a value and an impact, and tree seedlings that would give them a nutritious source of food for them. And this is where we began to incorporate fruit trees into schools and establishing what we call food forests. So this is just a highlight of an example to show you that really young people are participating in land restoration and they want to be more and more involved in land restoration. But the question is, how can we now help meaningfully engage young people and involve them in the whole process? Because this is the restoration generation. And of course, we need to maximize on the impact of what they're already doing right now. And of course, we also need to help young people unleash their creativity and innovations in addressing degradation. And even looking around in our country, there's a lot going on with young people. There are a lot of youth-led initiatives that are happening right now in terms of engaging in land restoration. And all of these youth groups, most of them are focusing on nature-based solutions. And maybe why are they doing what they're doing right now? It's because right now we believe that every action and every decision that is being made right now will greatly impact us, and we are the ones who will have to live longer with the consequences, which really also emphasizes on why we need to continue meaningfully engaging the young people. And maybe I'll just talk a lot about why and how we are really going to make sure that we meaningfully engage the young people. Because land restoration, like we've just had, it's beyond planting trees. It's about forest restoration. It's about sustainable agriculture. It's about awareness, education. It's about making sure that we halt every activity that is fueling biodiversity loss, every activity that is also fueling deforestation. And of course, I do believe in the power and the energy and the enthusiasm in young people to really change and build the kind of future that we want to see. So one of the things that we definitely need to do and can do is to recognize young people as part of the stakeholders throughout the entire landscape restoration processes. I know we have youth policies, and we also have bodies that are like selected to represent young people, but we are saying that this is not really enough. What we need to see is seeing young people as significant contributors, seeing them as solution providers, and seeing them for the skills, the ideas, the innovations and technologies that they bring on board, and then empowering them enough to be able to maximize on their impacts. And all the teams that I've mentioned, for instance, we have so many ongoing initiatives by the young people. And I believe that there's a huge role to play in terms of bringing all these groups together and identifying ways in which we can make sure that together they can become a force, collectively they can become a force. And I think the other thing, of course, we also need to focus on is to raise the voices of young people. We need to empower young people to also showcase their work, because if we do not tell their stories, then nobody is going to discover that young people are really engaging in land restoration. And unless we bring the people who are really working down there at the grassroots levels and involve them in the whole process and make sure that they also get an opportunity to tell their stories, they get an opportunity to share to the world what they're doing, and then in the process connect them with collaborators and partners, then I think that would be the best thing that we can really do. And then the other thing would be building capacity for the young people. We are saying that they have the knowledge, the ideas, and the skills, but we need to continue harnessing what they already have right now and make sure that we are giving them the really skills that they need to also be significant contributors, just like any other stakeholder right now that we have. And I think the other thing that you normally forget is that young people are also creating their own opportunities. Young people are creating opportunities for others out there. And of course, we need to begin sharing these success stories. We even have groups of young people out there who try to fundraise for their initiatives, groups of young people who create opportunities for other young people out there, which shows you that indeed the energy and the enthusiasm to want to engage in land restoration is something that we can really definitely tap into. And I think the other last thing is invest in us. We need to provide financing towards nature-based solutions, and these nature-based solutions are being led by none other than the young people out there who are trying every day to address some of the different challenges that they are facing in their communities. We're trying every other day to address the impacts of the climate crisis that are greatly affecting us. And of course, we really want to be part of the solution because we believe we are part of the solution. And the only thing that, the main thing that we can do right now is to make sure that we recognize the young people as the voices of change and then involve them throughout the whole process. And I would like to possibly also highlight that these teams are really engaging in restoration right now. They're teams of young people who have empowered themselves. They're teams of young people who have come together to address some of the challenges they are seeing being faced in their communities. And of course, if we begin to recognize them as part of the stakeholders, as part of the key significant contributors, then we can be able to maximize on the impacts that they're trying to address right now. Yes, we say that small efforts multiplied by millions of people can make a difference. And also these small efforts, once they are maximized and once they are empowered enough with the skills, with the technologies, with the knowledge, and with having their voices raised out there for people to discover them, then they can definitely continue to make huge and meaningful impacts out there. And so I do believe in the voices of young people. I do believe in young people being the voices of change in land restoration. And I do believe that every decision that is being made right now, young people can also definitely influence outcomes. And I would like to possibly end with—
Just wrapping up now, Elizabeth.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to end by saying that Professor Wangari Maathai really espoused on the idea of the power of one person, that each one of us can make a difference, but then collectively we are a force. And therefore, I'd like to just insist that no one is definitely too young to make a difference. So let us continue to see young people as solution providers, recognize them as part of stakeholders, bring them together, raise their voices, build their capacity, share their success stories, and also invest in them. And by that, we will have really moved many steps further in land restoration. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for those very powerful and passionate words, and very important for all of us to hear and to take on board. And Elizabeth, you'll see there's a number of comments in the chat and the Q&A that I hope you can respond to. There's a lot of energy around what you just presented. Now, it's my great pleasure to invite Mr. Peter Ndunda, who's a Senior Associate at the World Resources Institute, to touch a little bit on how non-governmental organizations can support a bottom-up restoration movement. Please, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Milker. I hope you can hear me very well. My name, as you mentioned, is Peter Ndunda. I'm a Senior Associate with the World Resources Institute. I'm leading our restoration work here in Kenya. Today, I'm very delighted to share some thoughts in this important forum on how non-governmental organizations can support a bottom-up restoration process in Kenya. While there are many ways NGOs can support, I would focus on only four roles in the interest of time. Role number one, NGOs can support to identify and build the capacity of restoration champions who inspire and lead restoration movements at the landscape level. In my opinion, this is very critical in fostering a peer-driven restoration movement like the example we have from the Green Belt movement. Role number 2, NGOs can support to foster shared understanding to achieve shared vision and goals for the landscapes. NGOs have a very important role in supporting establishment and strengthening of inclusive, multi-stakeholder platforms at these landscapes where we work. These platforms provide a forum for actors to participate, to share knowledge, to plan collaboratively, and to build shared ownership, which is extremely important for effective implementation. Number 3, connection role. NGOs should play a connection role, connecting stakeholders at the landscape level with resources, with technical assistance, with finances, and investors required to catalyze restoration on the ground. Effective partnerships at the grassroots level, in my opinion, is a key enabler for scaling restoration. Lastly, the empowerment role. In addition to supporting our restoration champions, NGOs should support communities to strengthen their infrastructure. For example, the community groups, tree nursery groups, and their capacity to implement these restoration activities at scale. This includes capacity to produce quality seedlings at scale, and also the ability to attract investors in their nature-based solutions. Thank you very much, and back to you, Milka.
Thank you so much, Peter, and very concise, wonderful, thank you. And great, clear pathways for supporting the bottom-up community-led restoration. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, I would like to go to Mr. James Ngawa Nditi, who is the Program Effectiveness and Impact Director from World Vision Kenya. And he'll be speaking a little bit about farmer-managed natural regeneration, where it's been successful and where it's being implemented in Kenya. Please continue.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody who is listening this morning and engaged. I want to quickly talk about what has been described, and I'm going to do a presentation very brief. First, to appreciate that FMNR, or Farmer Managed Natural Regeneration, is a concept that is not very new, but it's also a concept that is gaining ground because of the fact that it is proving that we don't need to invest a lot, to really restore our lands. There are other ways that we can do it much better. So I'll quickly go to our conversation today. We want to quickly, in the next 5 minutes, have a very simple understanding of what FMNR is. Why is it a solution to land restoration in this country, based on what other speakers have also talked about, and where FMNR has been implemented in Kenya, and perhaps some of the successes that we've noticed. And if you look at the picture on the background, this is a very dry area in this country. And FMNR is based on what this lady is doing. We have got millions and millions of latent seeds that have naturally consisted in the environment, and they are lying on the ground, just waiting for good conditions to help them regenerate. And so what FMNR is all about is how the communities can have a mindset change to then ensure that those seeds, trees, and everything is given opportunity to regenerate. And that when they regenerate, then they restore the ecosystem. So in a very, very simple definition, that is FMNR. And the reason why I'm talking about this simple definition is because we've realized that if communities understand simplicity, then we have got answers to restoring our ecosystem, and FMNR is a solution. Now, why is it a solution to restoration? That is the next conversation. Just as I've mentioned, one, this is a very simple, low-cost, community-driven, approach. It can be done by anybody else. And you don't need to buy seeds expensively, because you're talking about millions of tree seedlings, tree seeds, or vegetation seeds that already are existing on the ground. They're just waiting for somebody to provide an opportunity for them to sprout. Then the next thing is, how then do you manage them once they have sprout? And that is then what we teach and what we reach out to farmers and communities. Secondly, mindset change. I like what one of the participants have said, quoted Irene, that regreening hearts and minds is a key to achieving sustainable land restoration. If the minds and hearts are not regreened, then it's difficult to regreen the ecosystem. So the secret behind FMNR is making the hearts and minds of people to be regreened. Once they visualize that, then they become part of the movement. Then diversification of livelihoods, very key, because in the opening remarks, we heard from Elmi that unless people get incentives and you tell them why they're conserving their ecosystems, then they're not able to really invest in it. But FMNR has proved that diversification of livelihood is a big, breakthrough, because people are able to conserve the ecosystem while benefiting alongside those efforts. And of course, a big one is conflict management. We've realized that people, and of course it's true that in this country, and especially the areas where we are fighting desertification, scarcity of resources is becoming the norm. Some of the conflicts that we really are able to control very easily without really, investing in arms and all those things can easily be done through dialogue, and FMNR provides that opportunity. So again, this is very key. And finally, in terms of making sure that the most vulnerable people are involved, and if you talk about the vulnerable people in our communities and where we work, mostly in those areas that we talk about, women comes into mind, and the youth. And so these are very friendly and very easy to access, approach. And therefore it provides women with the opportunity to also appeal to some of the issues that they go through. In this country, if you look at those contexts and down, mostly the chaos of a woman when she wakes up in the morning is, where will I get food for my family? How will I cook it? And where is the fuel? And the answer is in FMNR. And then finally, some of the areas that we have worked with this approach in Kenya, across the country, I will not go into deep because you can see that. But basically, we've got quite a bit of partners who have invested in this effort. European Union in 9 countries in Western Kenya and Central Rift are covering a regreening project. In Central Rift, in particular, 3 countries through the government of Australia. We are also doing scale up of FMNR. And then we are also doing FMNR again through an integrated management and natural resource project in Asal, that is in the 4 counties of Northern Kenya. And then down up to the last one through the cooperation of the Dutch government. That has been a very successful project. We just wound it 1 year ago in 3 counties of Ukambani. And so some of the successes that we can talk about in these all areas that I've mentioned is basically increasing women and youth participation, and making sure that the manuals and things that communities can be able to look at is available, and also livelihoods have been able to be restored, and over 250,000 hectares of degraded land restored. So basically, those are some of the thoughts that we have and successes we have experienced. And I want to stop it from there. I hope there was more time that we could talk, but I believe this is a beginning and we'll have opportunity to converse further. Welcome to World Vision Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James, and sorry for the short time. We will come back to all of these topics in much greater detail And we will also have a short video on FMNR in a few minutes, so we can touch on that a little bit more. So thank you so much for introducing us to farmer managed natural regeneration. So Patrick, I can see that you're ready, you're on the screen. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Patrick Moogie. He's the Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And he'll be touching a little bit on how we establish a credible and inclusive monitoring system for land restoration. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. As said, my name is Patrick Moogie. I work with FAO Kenya in M&D for the restoration project. We term it as TRI or TREE. I wish to thank, first of all the organizers of this very important and timely event for this opportunity to share about establishing a credible and inclusive monitoring and evaluation system for restoration in Kenya and to report on international commitments. Secondly, on whether it is necessary to have a national and joint monitoring task force. So I will start with the second question, where the necessity of a joint M&E task force, I will say, is a resounding and absolute yes. As practitioners of the restoration space, we have to move together and speak in the same language in an effort to build strong and movement to halt degradation and restore our ecosystems. The task force can develop a common monitoring framework with harmonized, I repeat, with harmonized core indicators to measure targets set in the national strategies and have a consolidated report on the commitments that are made under the AFR 100 and the Bond Challenge. This can also be our Kenyan standard, both at the national and the county level, for monitoring restoration and enable sharing of information, ideas, M&E tools, expertise, be able to share targets and the tasks, and hence at the end of the day we have better results. So how do we build a credible and inclusive M&E system? We will ask ourselves. A credible system is one that is acceptable, one that is dependable, and one that is trustworthy. This can be achieved through, for instance, leveraging on the use of technology and blending with the local knowledge. An example I can give is a mapathon exercise, which is a coordinating mapping event involving remote data collection and ground truthing, which can be done from the comfort of your computer. A case in point and what FAO is using is the Open Forest Initiative that facilitates access to specialized software tools for environmental monitoring through satellite imagery. There are a set of free and open source tools, which means you can download them from your telephone, from your mobile phone, from your Google Play Store. Some of the tools under this initiative, we have Open Forest Collect, which is a tool for survey design and data management. We have Collect Mobile for field data collection, and a Collect Earth, which is now data collection through the Google Earth. Applications like Bing Maps, Google Earth Engine, that we use this to analyze high resolution satellite imagery. For more information on that, you can visit www.openforest.org. So how do we make it inclusive? An inclusive system is one that is all-encompassing, without exception, and is across-board. And this has been voiced by our CAS and other speakers who have spoken before me. One, we need to have a participatory, a consultative, and a coordinated process. There are numerous initiatives and efforts towards restoration in this country by different actors, both government and private individuals, NGOs, communities, and so on. And this calls for synergy and leadership. And for sustainability purposes, the Kenyan government should, and I repeat, should and must lead via its mandated institutions, for example, KEFRI and KEFIS, KEFRI, KFS, among others. And if we are to follow the analogy given by Dr. Susan, I will say the government should be the pilot. Currently, as FAO, we are supporting KEFRI to develop a national FLR knowledge management system, the FLR portal that is going to be part of the FLR Restoration Implementation Action Plan, which is being led by KFS, and it's denoted as FOLAREP. For ease of remembering, it's denoted as FOLAREP. This will be a common platform for information hub, a one-stop shop where all interested partners in restoration can find and share information, knowledge to ensure success of their efforts. We should thus put our efforts at building and improving and owning this process, which will go a long way in collating and coordinating our efforts. Secondly, these processes and structures should be anchored in law or be embedded in policy. For example, the FLR action plan that has been talked about earlier by the CCF and others. It is in its final stages of completion, and there has been so much consultation, even from the counties. And it is going to be a platform for engaging policymakers. And to say more about it is that it has coordination structures all over the country, from the national level to the counties and also to the local level. And it will be strengthening those existing structures. For example, we have the county environmental committees. We believe that it is better to strengthen the already existing structures rather than building new ones. The objective of this will be to strengthen policy. That is the objectives of the follow-up. To scale up restoration and promote best practices, generate economic opportunities for both women and youth, strengthen the governance and institutional coordination, which has been mentioned quite a bit by others. And lastly, and most importantly, is establish an M&E framework. And we can relate this to the joint task force that we have discussed earlier on as being very key and important in terms of reporting of what our activities and initiatives are. In summary, therefore, I would say to prevent, to halt and reverse degradation of ecosystems and restore them as envisioned in the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, I humbly submit to us all that we have to connect and empower the actions of many. The time for working in silos or by ourselves is long gone. And as we say here in Kenya, kidole kimoja hakivunji chao. For those who do not understand Kiswahili, it means you can't squeeze a bag using one finger. You gotta use two. So thank you so much for the time. Asante.
Thank you so much, Patrick, and wonderful closing words around collaboration. And I hope that that is why we are all here together today at the beginning of what will be a wonderful journey as a collaborative and inclusive process. So we just have a few moments for Q&A. I can see there's a lot happening in the chat. There's a lot happening in the Q&A box. There's some answers coming through, and there are some that have been voted up. So I just want to ask one to KFS and Kefri. This is from Irene Ojwok. And she asked, what is the strategy for empowering farmers on scaling natural aided regeneration potentials on farmlands that have proven successful in Kenya and other parts of the world, especially in the arid and semi-arid lands? So Dr. Jane Juguna, Charity, and any others that would like to add. Mr. Kamal, we welcome your additions. Please just unmute yourself and add your comments. Dr. please.
I actually, Madam Chair, I was typing my answer to that. From the Kefri perspective, we have programs where we train farmers on tailor-made courses for certain groups. This has been going on for quite some time. We have activities in social forestry and also farm forestry. Where possible, we train farmers to use their land or leave the land as fallow. But in most cases, we find that on the farmlands, we promote technologies that are suited for the farms and the specific regions. And also our main focus is to train farmers on the principle of the species site matching, because this has been the most frustrating, where farmers just plant tree species or various tree species, then they fail. And it's a frustrating process. As an institution, we focus on species site matching for the farmers, and also promoting technologies that are suitable to certain regions and the sites, and especially the tree species. CCF, you want to support me?
Yes, Dr. I own those sentiments as if they are mine. And just to possibly say that I would want to bring to this conversation also the critical role of the county governments. As you would appreciate, we have also devolved function, and mostly in terms of the farmland landscapes, mostly is a devolved function by the county government. However, as a Kenya Forest Service, we also have a duty under the same constitution to support the county government in terms of technical advice, and also in terms of building their capacity so that they can still sustain, especially the extension and advisory role to the farmers. And I think that's something that we have been working towards in terms of developing of the transition implementation plans, where most counties have been able to sign. A few others are yet to sign. And now our focus is to ensure that the counties themselves own up this activity and support the farmers wherever they are. And therefore, we continue to engage. We continue to use our different partners in doing the same, but we believe that the county government have a critical role to play in terms of ensuring that the farmland ecosystems are stable for the livelihoods of the people. And therefore, it's good I bring that on board, because it also may inform the composition of this webinar in future, because I believe the county governments also play a very critical role so that we can be able to work together as government agencies and other partners to change the story. And also, we are also engaging through our CFA, that one we engage in the various forests. We are building their capacities. They are in these farmlands. And actually, we are also encouraging them to create networks with other community networks so that they can broaden some practical measures that they can be able to do on their own farmlands. That's the way I would wish to respond to that question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both from KEFRI and KFS, for that response. I would really love to have more time for questions and answers, but given that we only have a few minutes left and we still have a short video and another speaker or two, I would ask that we respond in the Q&A response box and in the chat box. So now I would like to pass back to our IT support so that we can have a short video on tackling climate change through regeneration of trees.
Large areas of many countries have been deforested. We have a situation of growing population at a time of changing climate, a time when land is degrading, forests are disappearing rapidly.
If you are here 10 or 15 years ago, there was nothing here. You could see somebody who comes from the farthest Manyata to the other end.
In Kenya, farmer-managed natural regeneration is a remedy to climate change and creating resilience of marginalized communities in the Asals.
We don't have time, and we certainly don't have the money, millions of dollars that it would cost to have large-scale tree planting schemes. After you cut the tree down, the tree's not dead. It still has the ability to re-sprout, to send up new shoots. But what's happening is, because of constant grazing, constant pressure from animals, and people have desperate need for fuel wood, they're always cutting those small branches as they come up, that tree stump never has the opportunity to grow into a full tree. And FMNR, all it is the systematic selection and management of some of those shoots coming up. We're going to thin, so we'll reduce the competition, reduce the number of shoots, so that the best ones, the strongest ones, the tallest ones have a very good chance to grow quickly. And then we manage the constraints.
Over 240 members in Marsabit County are engaging in farmer-managed natural regeneration activities at community level, supported by World Vision through the IMARA program. The pastoralist groups have adopted the FMNR concept to help as part of IMARA's regreening initiatives.
We work with environmental management committees, which are in every location. We work with mother-to-mother support groups, we work with youth groups, and we work with even women groups, self-help groups. And basically, when we practice FMNR in this community, we are targeting the indigenous species, which have high value to the community members in terms of their livelihoods.
The pastoral community groups have created FMNR demonstration sites that are protected in efforts to nurture young trees and stumps.
Unaona sahi hapa kama kutoka kwa ukiangalia sahi hii mali wameanzisha ni kama ekari 5 kwa sababu ni mpaka huko chini. Na mahali yote ambao tutapata shooting ya hii acacia tunajaribu kuprotect.
Through integration of World Vision programs, Irene Lepatoy from Ngurnit Ward is a beneficiary of FMNR. Her homestead is a model farm that the community groups in Marsabit are learning from.
Baada ya kufanya FMNR sasa tukaona changes kwa compound, ilikuwa mzuri, alafu hiyo nini greens inamea, hiyo hiyo grass. Kuna vitu mingi basi kuku wanakula. Kuamua tu kufuga kuku kwa sababu hata iko na faida kwetu kama familia.
When these trees get pods, you know, pods from these trees are very nutritious for livestock. That is number one. Firewood is also another big issue in core. If they are able to conserve what is close to their homestead, then of course they will get that resource.
The trees, whether you plant them or do FMNR, they create favorable microclimate for growing high-value crops. But then it even gets better than that, because now you have somewhere to put beehives, and many tree species are flowering, and they provide the food that the bees need to make honey.
Thank you so much for that very inspiring video. And now, May, I would like to ask if we could also put the to open the remarks from Tony Ronaldo, who you just saw in that video. He's a Senior Climate Action Advisor for World Vision Australia and a man behind much of this effort on FMNR.
Greetings, I'm very happy to be joining you in this conference launch. The short video clip that you've just watched gives just one of many examples of where Kenya is leading the way in land restoration techniques. In 2012, ICRAF and World Vision hosted the world's first FMNR conference in Nairobi at a time when the technique was barely known. 8 short years later, FMNR is a household term in development, donor and government circles, and it's spread and having an impact in more than 25 countries worldwide. Through ICRAF, Kenya is a major centre of research into FMNR impact. There are also a number of county governments that have included FMNR in their annual plans and budgets. Today, Moi University, in partnership with World Vision, is preparing a tertiary level FMNR curriculum. This will also be a world first. The FMNR movement began in Niger Republic with just 10 farmers, and despite much opposition and many setbacks, they persevered. After 20 years, the technique had spread to 5 million hectares, restoring around 200 million trees, and at that time it had an impact on gross income of around $1,000 per household, or $900 million across the nation every year, and grain production increased by about 500,000 tonnes per year without any additional inputs. This was a bottom-up, farmer-led movement, and the Niger example begs the question. If one of the poorest countries in the world, with minimum government or NGO support, in a harsh environment on the edge of the Sahara Desert, could achieve so much with so little, what could Kenya achieve? With intentionality, with top-down support of a bottom-up movement, with research and education institutional support and line ministry support, and with the participation of faith-based organizations, NGOs, and civil society? And the answer is, of course, nothing short of miraculous. If Niger could achieve 5 million hectares in 20 years, there is no technical reason why Kenya couldn't restore 5 million hectares in 5 years. Such a movement would have a very big impact on food security, on economic development, environment, climate, conflict, migration in Kenya itself. But as a trendsetter, Kenya would also lead and influence what other countries do. There's an old saying, if you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, then by all means, go for it. Give it all you've got. And so what I want to challenge you and encourage you with is this. Don't hold back. Give it all you've got and support the Kenya National Restoration Movement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. And now I would like to pass over to Dr. Dennis Garrity, who is the chair of the Global Evergreening Alliance, a senior fellow at both C4ICRAF and WRI, and a UNCCD Drylands ambassador, for some inspirational remarks. Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mika, and all of the speakers and participants who've been contributing to this wonderful dialogue we've had today. You know, for those of us who are working globally through the Evergreening Global Alliance, we see Kenya as a model for mobilizing a national movement for restoration, a model that can inspire many other countries around Africa and the world, because the progress that Kenya has been making is quite significant. You know, successful restoration programs are really the starting point. The realization of what has worked on the ground at scale is the basis for rapidly moving forward, just as Tony Ronaldo just emphasized a few moments ago. And as Irene Ojuk said elegantly in the chat box today, I quote, "Regreening hearts and minds is a key pathway to achieving sustainable land restoration." It means we must not forget that changing mindsets and engaging with people's psychology is fundamental to building a national restoration movement. And we need to put more attention to that. Well, you know, the Kenyan Restoration Technical Committee, which was very active a few years ago in developing our 5.1 million hectare target, in which I participated, has already identified a number of very impressive restoration successes, a few of which were highlighted today. But my favorite among the bright spots has been the efforts of millions of Kenyan farmers who have established trees on their farms throughout the country. In fact, we discovered through our mapping exercise that 70% of Kenya's farmlands now has greater than 10% tree cover already. Now that is an accomplishment that has gone unheralded, mostly unrecognized, but I think we should give that credit to the millions of farmers who have already succeeded in greater than 10% tree cover on their farms. Now, the greatest advances, I would admit, have so far been achieved in the highlands, and we have major areas in the drylands, the asals, that have not so far achieved 10% tree cover. And that, of course, is a major focus that should be the direction of work in the coming years. One of the other aspects that I think will be critical and very exciting as our conference on restoration develops, and that is targeting at the local level, cascading the 5.1 million hectare national target into a target for every single county that adds up to 5.1 million. And ultimately, further cascading down to local targets right at the community level. And that is what will motivate and will inspire people right down to the villages. Well, Mika, I would like to ask everyone to stay tuned for the next in line of the series of webinars during the first half of 2021. These webinars will be drilling down to focus on some of the key issues that will be explored as we address each of the conference objectives. The webinars will crescendo in mid-year when we have the national conference convening in mid-2021. So let me thank all of our contributors today, the speakers, our contributors in the chat box, questioners, and panel members, and also our support professionals behind the scene, including May Muturi and Winnie Ache, and the members of the conference planning Committee. Mika, our conversation is over for today, but it is only the first conversation. We look forward to seeing you all again at the Kenya Restoration Webinar number 2. Onwards, everybody, onwards.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, everybody. Just to let you know, we are finished up. I'm just launching a very short poll on areas that you think are interesting, and we'd love your feedback on what types of webinars, if you want webinars moving forward. We look forward to engaging further. We're going to bring up a screen with an email address that you can contact if you want to get involved. So yes, as Dennis has said it all, thank you to everybody for participating, for supporting. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Apologies for being a few minutes late. Thank you, everybody.
We truly appreciate all of the participants. We truly, truly appreciate all these speakers. Thank you so much. Please participate on the poll as you exit the meeting, and have a brilliant, brilliant day.